By now, most of us know what AI is.
AI is artificial intelligence.
Correct. And as Alexandra tells us, artificial intelligence is creating a real controversy.
We know that AI is great for finding information on the internet. It can help us find our way around town.
Starting Route 2 Valley View Drive. Proceed to LaRoe Road, then take the first left.
Robots using AI can do a lot of things that humans can do, including creating art, like paintings, movies, and music. So here's the question. If it was made by AI, is it art? Joining us again is Professor Marcel O'Gorman. He's from Canada's University of Waterloo in Ontario. He's written books and articles about AI. Welcome back to Teen Kids News.
Thanks for having me back. I'm glad to be here.
Professor, we asked a number of students if art that's created by artificial intelligence should be considered as real art. Here are some of their comments.
I don't think so, because AI isn't made by a person, and art and movies is supposed to have emotions behind it. And if it's made by AI, then it doesn't have the human feel to it. So no, I don't think it's real art.
Art is something that people feel, and when it's done by something artificial, it loses that sense of realness.
Oh no. Art is something that the human mind has created. A computer can create art, but that does not mean it's genuine art.
So, Professor, what do you think of their reasoning?
Well, I think their reasoning is spot on. I think their reasoning is very reasonable. So most artists, curators, or art historians would say that art is a uniquely human activity. What we enjoy about art is how it allows us to connect to other human beings and to the human experience. So if a machine makes art, we don't really have that same connection, unless we connect to the person who made the machine and call them the artist.
Up to now, we've been talking about art in the abstract, so to speak. But this was created by a computer software, as was this, and even this. Should these be considered works of art?
Yeah, well, each of these is artistic in its own way, and each of them copies a specific style of art. So one of them copies surrealism, for example. One of them copies portraits, and one of them copies a landscape painting. But just because we see it there on a screen and it looks pretty good doesn't mean it's art. If we saw them in a gallery, we'd consider them works of art. Or if artists or museums said that they're art, we consider them as art. This is kind of problematic. And in fact, there's an artist named Marcel Duchamp, who put a bathroom urinal into an art gallery and called it art. And it's now one of the most iconic pieces of modern art in the world. You can go see it in Philadelphia if you'd like. What he was proving was that anything can be art as long as the art world will accept it as art. So the question is the art world ready to accept AI art as a form of art? Maybe not now, maybe just a little bit in very rare cases, but there are reasons for the art world not wanting to accept it as a work of art.
One of those reasons is based on the claim that AI art is just a sophisticated form of copying other people's creativity. As this comment from Tyler points out,
I actually wrote a paper on this. I think that AI is killing modern art because of its use of reusing other people's art and turning it into something else. That's not AI's art. They're just taking art styles from other people and turning it into art. That's not art, in my opinion. Art is something that only a human mind can create, and it's a completely original idea.
Again, this is very tricky. There are whole art forms that are based on the reuse of other art. So think of hip hop music, for example, that remixes other songs and other music and other sounds to create something entirely new. So it isn't new that an art form is borrowing from other art forms. There are all kinds of art forms that do this. The difference, of course, is that, well, the artists whose work gets used in hip hop music, they get royalties for that. They get some kind of attribution for that, or they should, because otherwise it's unethical to just take their work. Whereas AI is kind of taking the work of artists from database entries and from the internet, and it's using those to create new artworks without the permission of those artists. That's problematic. There's an ethical issue here. So, there are a few different ways of looking at this.
one of those different ways is a comment from Emily. She gives an interesting take on AI and art.
I think AI itself is an art form, in a sense. So I feel like in a way it's art. I wouldn't consider it, though, art that should be studied and put in museums, because it's not showing like the human intellect behind it and the human emotion, which is what makes art important.
Your thoughts, Professor?
I like this. I think this is smart. And if someone's going to connect to AI art, then that's good for them, and they can consider it an art form, and that's fine. As I said earlier, people are drawn to art because it's a form of connection, usually human connection. There could be a point in the future where we connect a lot more to AI. We have to remember that in the early days of photography, the art world didn't like it because they thought it was a way of automating painting. But eventually what they did was the art world accepted photography, and now we have whole galleries dedicated to photography.
This controversy is more than just an academic debate. It's a big issue for lots of people who make a living by creating. For example, screenwriters went on strike to try to prevent Hollywood studios from using AI to develop scripts. How serious is the threat that AI could put many people, writers, artists, composers, musicians, out of work?
It's a very serious threat. So the example of writing is very good, and you can think of people like journalists, for example. So we already have examples of AI-generated journalism and news content. But you can also think of something like fashion photography. So AI can generate photography of a designer's fashions on a fake model, for example. And really no human was involved except for the person creating that design using the AI software. So that could put a bunch of people out of business and out of work.
But how is this different from what is called progress? Refrigerators replace workers who used to deliver ice. Automation replaced switchboard operators. Lamplighters were no longer needed once electric lights were installed on city streets. Despite all those workers losing their jobs, the world still welcomed the advances in technology that made those workers obsolete.
There are a couple ways of discussing this as something different. The first way would be to think about what AI is replacing. It's not necessarily replacing physical labor, which is something that happened in all of those other examples. It's replacing mental labor or cognitive labor. And those activities are very closely aligned to what it means to be a human being, which is how we think, how we communicate, how we express ourselves, for example. So that's different.
Certainly a lot to think about. Thanks for speaking with us.
My pleasure.
It's been famously said that art is in the eye of the beholder, meaning there's no absolute standards that determine what is and what isn't art. To prove that point, there's the story of Pierre Brasseau. When his paintings debuted at an art show, most critics raved about them. One wrote a review in his newspaper saying, "Brasseau paints with powerful strokes, but also with clear determination. His brushstrokes twist with furious fastidiousness. Pierre is an artist who performs with the delicacy of a ballet dancer." The only problem was, this artist who painted with the delicacy of a ballet dancer wasn't an artist. He wasn't even a human. He was actually a 4-year-old chimpanzee named Pete. The art exhibit was a hoax. It was staged by a man who wanted to see if art critics really knew good art from bad. When it came to Pierre's paintings, guess a lot of them didn't. And they were made to look like chumps by a chimp. For Teen Kids News, I'm Alexandra.